In the quiet suburb of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, a horrific scene was unfolding within the Bever family home. Just before midnight, Crystal Bever, a brave 13-year-old girl, went upstairs to check on her brothers, Richard, 18, and Michael, 16, as they prepared for bed. Their mother, April Bever, had asked her to remind them to clean the dishes, a seemingly innocent task that would soon spiral into an unimaginable nightmare. As she approached their room, she had no idea that lurking within those walls were the chilling intentions of her brothers, driven by darkness and twisted fantasies. The air was thick with tension as Crystal entered the room, where the boys were experimenting with body armor, a sight that would send shivers down anyone's spine. They had been consumed by a growing obsession with weapons and violence, interests that April and their father David had dismissed as typical teenage behavior. But the reality was far more sinister. As Crystal innocently asked what they were doing, Michael's voice cut through the air with a haunting question: "Should we do it now?" What followed was a vicious attack that would leave 5 members of the Bever family dead, a crime so shocking it would resonate through the community for years to come. As the night deepened, the eerie calm that hung over Broken Arrow was a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within the Bever household. Crystal had always been the peacemaker in the family, the one who mediated the small disputes that occasionally arose among her brothers. She recalled their childhood, filled with laughter, shared secrets, and dreams of a future where they would conquer the world together. But that night felt different, almost foreboding. She noticed the unusual quietness that enveloped the house, a silence punctuated only by the occasional creaking of the floorboards and the soft rustle of fabric as her brothers shuffled about. Little did she know, this quietness was the calm before the storm, a storm that would unleash a violence she could never have anticipated. The brothers, who had once been her closest allies in their childhood adventures, had transformed into something unrecognizable, consumed by dark thoughts and dangerous ideas. Their fascination with weapons had morphed into a chilling fixation, and the body armor they had been experimenting with was no longer just a playful interest. It had become a symbol of their delusions of power and control. At that moment, as Crystal stood at the threshold of their room, she felt a chill run down her spine, an instinctive warning that something was terribly wrong. Her heart raced, and doubt clouded her mind. Were they truly preparing for a harmless game? Or was this the moment when innocence would be shattered forever? This question loomed over her as she stepped further into their world, unaware that she was about to be caught in a horrific reality from which there would be no escape. The familiarity of her home felt alien, a deceptive veil over the horrors about to unfold. A disturbed family. The Bever family seemed like any other at first glance, a big house, 7 children, and a seemingly normal life. But as neighbors later revealed, they were an exceptionally reclusive bunch. Despite their large home in a peaceful neighborhood, the Bevers rarely interacted with anyone outside their walls. It appeared they lived in their peculiar world, cut off from the colorful existence that existed all around them. Like Crystal frequently remarked during discussions, there was this nagging discomfort around their home. Something certainly was wrong. April did not send her children to school, but rather trained them at home while regularly posting on Reddit about parenting issues. Her shocking revelation said she got married to David when she was only 15 years old, and he had reached 26 years of age. The control they exerted over their children's lives created a volatile atmosphere. As the children grew, their isolation deepened, creating an insular world where the lines between reality and the dark fantasies they indulged in began to blur. The lack of social interaction stunted their emotional growth, leaving them ill-equipped to handle the complexities of relationships outside their family unit. While their peers were learning about friendship and empathy, the Bever children were ensnared in a web of fear and control, trapped in a home that felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Crystal often felt the weight of their isolation, caught between her loyalty to her family and an instinctual desire for connection with the outside world. It gnawed at her, an internal struggle that left her feeling profoundly lonely. The brothers, particularly Michael and Robert, spent countless hours immersing themselves in violent video games and disturbing documentaries, fascinated by the allure of notoriety that came with infamy. This obsession not only consumed their thoughts, but also fueled a dangerous camaraderie that twisted their bond into something dark. With each passing day, the atmosphere in the Bever home grew more suffocating, thick with unspoken tension and dread, setting the stage for the catastrophic events that would eventually shatter their world and the community around them. The boys were obsessed with violent media, and their interests spiraled into a dangerous fixation on serial killers and mass murderers, leading them down a dark and twisted path. As the summer of 2015 approached, the brothers became increasingly absorbed in their fantasies of violence. They would often discuss notorious killers, becoming enamored with the idea of infamy. In their minds, killing their family would not just be an act of violence, it would be the first step towards a larger plan, a plan to commit mass murder across the country. The isolation of the Bever family wasn't just a lifestyle choice, it was a breeding ground for the boys' darkest thoughts. In their secluded environment, they found solace in the shadows of violent fantasies, far removed from the typical joys of childhood. Conversations at the dinner table seldom revolved around school projects or friends. Instead, they were filled with discussions about gruesome murders and the lives of infamous criminals. Crystal often felt a chill creep up her spine when she overheard snippets of their conversations. The boys idolized figures like Ted Bundy and Charles Manson, viewing their heinous acts not with horror, but with disturbing admiration. This fascination was further fueled by an array of violent video games and movies that lined their shelves, glorifying chaos and brutality. Instead of feeling appalled by these narratives, Richard and Michael found themselves drawn into a world where violence was romanticized and the thrill of the hunt was celebrated. They crafted elaborate scenarios in which they would rise to notoriety, convinced that their names would be etched in the annals of history alongside their twisted idols. The brothers formed a pact, a sinister brotherhood, where their shared fantasies created an unbreakable bond, deepening their obsession with death and destruction. April and David, preoccupied with their own issues and neglectful of the warning signs, remained blissfully unaware of the toxic seeds being sown within their home. Crystal, caught in the middle, struggled with her feelings of helplessness and fear. She often sensed the darkness closing in, a suffocating weight that made her question the safety of their home. Each day became a delicate balancing act as she navigated her brother's turbulent emotions, hoping to maintain some semblance of normalcy in a world that was spiraling into madness. The unfolding horror. That fateful night, you could practically feel the tension in the air. It was like darkness itself was stalking the Bever household, waiting for the right moment to strike. And the attack? It wasn't just random chaos, it was a twisted plan, a horrific symphony of violence that played out in the shadows. Crystal, blissfully unaware of the nightmare brewing right beyond her door, innocently walked into her brother's room. And then, bam, she was hit with a savage wave of violence that shattered her world in an instant. Imagine the horror as Michael drove a knife into her throat. Can you believe that? The sheer betrayal left her in disbelief. In that horrifying moment, the light in her eyes dimmed, and the chilling realization washed over her. The monsters she had feared in her darkest nightmares were her brothers, the ones she had trusted and loved. Stabbed multiple times, she somehow dug deep, summoning every last bit of strength she could find. With desperation coursing through her veins, she stumbled outside, fighting for her life with every ounce of willpower left in her body. In a frantic attempt to save herself, she activated the alarm system, her last shot at getting help. Hope flickered like a candle in the wind, fragile and flickering. But just when it seemed she might escape, Michael, filled with adrenaline from his brutal act, yanked her back into their hellish home, convinced she was already dead. In the chaos that ensued, every heartbeat echoed with the weight of dread, thickening the air around them. Crystal, still grappling with the shock of betrayal, felt the warm trickle of blood cascading down her neck, a stark reminder of the horrifying reality she faced. As Michael dragged her back, her mind raced, desperately searching for an escape plan. Memories flooded in, her laughter shared with her brothers, the games they played, and the deep trust she had placed in them. It felt like a cruel joke, twisted by the very hands that had once offered her comfort. The house, once a place of safety, morphed into a maze of nightmares where every shadow held the potential for more violence. In her struggle, she remembered the lessons her mother had taught her about resilience, the strength hidden within, waiting to be unleashed. Summoning that inner power, she fought back against Michael's grip, a wild spark igniting her determination to survive. Every ounce of pain became fuel for her will to escape the clutches of her own flesh and blood. The alarm blared, cutting through the suffocating silence of the night, signaling for help and igniting a flicker of hope in her heart. Crystal realized that this wasn't just a fight for her life. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit against unimaginable odds. Outside, the night was eerily still, an unsettling silence enveloping the neighborhood, only broken by the haunting echoes of her muffled cries for help. And when the police finally showed up, oh man, they walked into a scene straight out of a nightmare. Blood was everywhere, painting a grotesque picture of the carnage that had unfolded inside those walls. Family members lay sprawled lifeless, mere shadows of the vibrant lives they once led. And the horrifying realization hit them. The very monsters responsible for this unspeakable atrocity were still lurking inside, relishing their gruesome triumph. What could drive two brothers to commit such a heinous act against their flesh and blood? Well, the answer was buried deep within their upbringing, a toxic mix of abuse, neglect, and the festering hatred that had thrived in the shadows of their home. Now, Crystal wasn't the only victim that night. Amid her brutal attack, their mother, April, rushed to help her daughter, only to plunge headfirst into her own horrifying fate. Can you even imagine? Stabbed 48 times, her desperate screams echoed through the house, a chilling soundtrack to the horrific chaos surrounding them. Michael and Robert, fueled by their bloodlust, danced between fear and frenzy, executing their sickening plan with a twisted precision that defied comprehension. It was a grotesque performance, turning familial love into something utterly unrecognizable. As April's screams filled the air, the chaotic energy in the house only intensified, transforming it into a nightmarish battleground. The brothers, lost in their frenzy, seemed almost detached from reality, their minds consumed by a cocktail of adrenaline and something far darker. Each stab was not just an act of violence, it was a sick expression of power and control, a twisted game they played against the very essence of family. The visceral horror of the situation hung heavy in the air, suffocating any remaining traces of love and warmth that once defined their home. In those harrowing moments, the concept of safety shattered, leaving behind an echo of betrayal that would haunt Crystal for the rest of her life. The vivid imagery of that night would forever linger in her memory, a grim reminder of the fragility of trust, as she realized the very people who were supposed to protect her were now her tormentors. It was an unfathomable transformation, twisting the familiar bonds of the family into a grotesque parody of love, forever altering the course of their lives and leaving deep scars on their community. And let's not forget the youngest siblings, Daniel, just 12, Christopher, only 7, and little Victoria, a mere 5 years old. They weren't spared from this madness either. Their feeble attempts to hide from the encroaching darkness were completely futile. The brothers used deceit and manipulation to lure them into a trap that sealed their fates. What awaited those innocent kids? It was sheer horror for the siblings as they turned against one another in an extremely nightmarish scenario, the kind of brutality that even seasoned officers who arrived sometime later could not believe. They narrated the bloodshed with bulging eyes of disbelief, trying to accept the sorrowful reality that had taken place before them. And just when you think things couldn't get any more disturbing, the brothers discovered they still had one family member who was alive, their baby sister, Autumn. But Mercy? Forget about it. She was merely a loose end that needed to be tied up in their minds, which had gone wrong. But fate had different plans for her life, luckily enough. Their quick response saw law enforcement swoop in just in time to save another innocent life from being eliminated. In such a confused atmosphere, 5 lives were mercilessly lost, leaving behind a community that could hardly imagine what had happened right under its nose. As the chaos unfolded, the tranquility of Broken Arrow shattered, leaving the community in disbelief. News of the Bever family's tragedy spread like wildfire, igniting a storm of shock and horror among neighbors and friends. People who had once waved hello across the street or shared a quick chat in passing could hardly fathom the brutality that had occurred just a stone's throw away. Vigils sprang up in the days that followed, filled with grieving friends and neighbors clutching candles, their flickering flames a stark contrast to the darkness that had descended upon the Bever home. Questions swirled in the air like autumn leaves caught in a fierce wind. How could such horror happen in their quiet suburb? What had gone so wrong in that seemingly ordinary household? Parents held their children closer, whispers of fear echoing through the streets as the community struggled to comprehend the loss of innocent lives and the shattered remnants of a family that had once seemed so whole. This tragedy left a scar that would not easily heal, a chilling reminder of the hidden horrors that can lie just beneath the surface of everyday life. The hunt for justice. When the police finally arrived, it was like walking straight into a whirlwind of confusion and chaos. Officers pushed through the door, hearts racing, as they followed the blood trail left by Crystal's desperate escape. Each step deeper into the house revealed the staggering extent of the tragedy that had just unfolded. Every room told its horrifying tale, showcasing just how deeply rooted the brothers' violence was. It wasn't just a family torn apart. It was a stark reminder of how darkness can creep into even the most unsuspecting homes. Meanwhile, those two brothers took off into the woods behind their house, leaving behind a gruesome trail of blood and body armor. You'd think they'd be freaking out, right? But surprisingly, they were calm, almost too calm, considering the horrific acts they'd just committed. As the police took them into custody, their laid-back attitude left the officers scratching their heads. Did they understand the magnitude of what they had done? Or had they slipped into some kind of delusion, thinking they were above it all? The officers couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief that hung heavy in the air. Each officer exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of horror and disbelief as they absorbed the chaotic scene before them. The gruesome reality of what had transpired weighed on them like a leaden cloak, and they felt the chilling shadows of fear creeping closer. How could siblings, bound by blood, turn against each other and their family in such a horrific manner? The unsettling thought lingered in their minds as they processed the brutality they had witnessed. Meanwhile, in the woods, the brothers moved stealthily, their minds racing with thoughts of escape, a bizarre calm washing over them as they reveled in their heinous act. The thrill of their newfound infamy loomed large, eclipsing any sense of remorse. As dawn began to break over Broken Arrow, the sun illuminated the chaos, casting long shadows over the remnants of a shattered family and a community forever changed by the darkness that had seeped into their lives. The trial and aftermath. In the days that followed, the community of Broken Arrow was rocked to its core. Families locked their doors tighter than ever, and whispers of fear spread like wildfire. How could this happen? That question echoed throughout the town, leaving everyone in disbelief. The trials that followed were just as disturbing, forcing the brothers to confront the reality of their actions. Robert, being the older one and viewed as the mastermind behind this horror, initially tried to play it cool, even taking a twisted sort of pride in what he had done. But as the trials dragged on, cracks began to show in his tough exterior. His attempts to act like a cold-blooded killer faded as the weight of reality hit him like a freight train. Meanwhile, Michael, the younger brother, took a different approach, claiming he had been coerced into participating. The courtroom turned into a stage for their chaotic dynamic, where loyalty and betrayal danced dangerously close, blurring the lines of family loyalty. And through all this, Crystal's resilience truly shone. She survived that brutal attack and was determined to share her story, not just for her family, but for every victim of violence out there. Can you imagine the strength it took to face her brothers in court, recounting the horror of that night while battling the physical and emotional scars they had inflicted upon her? It was nothing short of inspiring. The once quiet neighborhood? It had transformed into a haunting ground for whispers of what had occurred. The remnants of the Bever home became a chilling monument to a family shattered beyond repair. As the years rolled on, the community tried to heal, but the scars, they remained. And as for Robert and Michael, their names became synonymous with horror, forever etched into the minds of anyone who heard their story. As the trials unfolded, the small town of Broken Arrow became a focal point for national media coverage, with cameras capturing every twist and turn of the horrifying saga. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, eager to catch a glimpse of the brothers who had shattered the lives of so many. The courtroom became a battleground, not just for justice, but for the community's collective healing. Crystal, bolstered by her determination, emerged as a powerful symbol of survival, drawing attention from advocacy groups fighting against violence. Her story resonated with many, prompting discussions about the often hidden realities of familial abuse and mental health. Despite the trauma she endured, she used her voice to highlight the importance of seeking help and raising awareness about the dark undercurrents that can exist in seemingly ordinary households. Meanwhile, the brothers' contrasting defenses fueled public fascination, leading to heated debates about culpability and the nature of evil. The community, grappling with feelings of betrayal and vulnerability, sought solace in one another as they shared their own stories of resilience in the face of adversity. Even as the judicial process unfolded, the sense of unease lingered, a reminder that the shadows of that fateful night would forever loom over Broken Arrow, shaping its identity and reminding everyone of the fragility of safety and trust. What do you think about this chilling case? We want to hear your thoughts, so drop your comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into darkness, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more riveting content that keeps you on the edge of your seat. Your next thrilling story awaits. Join our community and let's unravel the mysteries together. Curious about what happened when a teen girl sought revenge on her stepmother? Watch this video to find out.